Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip back in time deep into the Middle Ages and sit right in the smoky corner of a peasant's hut, except you're not here to admire the flicker of firelight on rough-hewn beams. No, you're here for your teeth, or rather to realize just how little they'll survive in this world. Imagine biting into a crust of bread so hard it could chip a millstone, or sipping ale that's warm, sour, and full of unfiltered grit. You probably won't survive this, not your smile anyway. The truth is, you're about to find out exactly why being a medieval peasant's teeth was an experience of constant assault from the moment they pushed through your gums in childhood to the day you were laid in the earth. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from right now, and what time is it for you? Drop it in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born into a one-room cottage, damp in winter, stifling in summer, with a floor of packed earth and a hearth that smokes more than it heats. Your first memories of eating aren't gentle, no mashed vegetables in porcelain bowls here. It's whatever your mother can mash with a wooden pestle, whatever your father brings from the fields, and whatever's been sitting in the pot since yesterday. The texture, always rough. Even soft food has grit from the mill, or a stray bit of chaff, or splinters of bark from the ladle. You don't know any better. You gum and chew like all village children, your baby teeth already under siege before you learn your first prayer. The air in your home is thick with smoke from the fire smoke that seeps into your mouth and leaves a faint taste on your tongue. You don't realize it, but the constant exposure dries your gums and makes them tender. Your mother doesn't think about brushing. Why would she? Toothbrushes, as you know them, don't exist here. And cleaning teeth is more about rinsing your mouth with cold water from the bucket when you've finished eating. If you're lucky, she might give you a rag to rub across your teeth now and then. But there's no minty foam, no promise of fresh breath. Meals revolve around bread. Bread in the Middle Ages isn't soft and fluffy. It's a dense, dark loaf baked with coarse flour, sometimes stretched with ground beans, peas, or even ground acorns when wheat is scarce. The flour is milled between stones that leave tiny flecks of grit in the dough, microscopic blades that scrape enamel with every bite. You chew, 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 swallowing hard, and with each swallow, a little more of your enamel wears away. By the time you're old enough to help in the fields, your teeth already have hairline cracks invisible to you, but eager to deepen. Sweetness is rare and dangerous. If someone offers you honey, you lick it from your fingers, savoring the cloying richness. But the sugar lingers in your mouth, feeding the bacteria you've never heard of. There's no concept of cavities in your world. Just teeth that suddenly ache, gums that swell, and the eventual agony of rot. You might go to the village healer, but she has no cure for what's inside your jaw. At best, she'll give you a herbal poultice to press against the side of your face, numbing the pain for a night or two. And then there's ale, the drink you consume more often than water, because water can make you sick. The ale is weak and sour, but it's brewed with grain that leaves residue between your teeth. It's warm, it's cloudy, and it leaves a faint stickiness that your tongue can't quite clear. You drink it morning and night, and you think nothing of it, until one day a tooth gives a sharp twinge when you bite into a piece of turnip. Nobody talks about dental hygiene, but everyone talks about tooth loss. Old men and women with sunken mouths are common. Their words slurred not from drink, but from the absence of molars. Sometimes you'll see a neighbor with a piece of cloth tied around their head, holding their jaw, an unspoken signal that they're enduring a toothache that could last weeks. You learn early that once a tooth hurts, it won't get better. It will hurt until it rots, falls out, or is yanked by someone with a steady hand and a strong stomach. In your village, the extraction is done by whoever has the courage or sometimes the blacksmith. He has the tools after all, and a pair of iron tongs can grip a tooth as well as a horseshoe. You've seen it happen, the victim seated on a stool, head back, a mug of ale or something stronger downed in preparation. Then a grunt, a twist, a scream muffled by the crowd's murmurs, and the tooth comes free, often with a piece of gum or jaw attached. The blacksmith wipes the tongs on his apron. The patient spits blood into the dirt, and life goes on. You live in a world where dental agony is a fact of life, a shadow that follows every mouth. Your smile isn't something you think of as an asset. It's just teeth tools for eating. And like any tool, they will break dull and fail long before you do. By the time you're 7 or 8, you've already learned that biting into certain foods comes with a risk. A pebble in a lentil stew, a burned crust at the edge of the bread, either could snap a tooth. You've watched your older brother spit blood into the dirt after breaking one of his front teeth on a barley loaf that had cooled too close to the fire. Nobody made much of it. Your father just shrugged and told him to chew on the other side. In your world, a broken tooth isn't a crisis. It's simply the next stage of life. You don't understand why your teeth ache more in winter until you're much older. The cold makes them sensitive, but so does the diet: fewer fresh foods, more dried grains and preserved meats. Salted pork is a luxury, but it's tough, sinewy, and tears at your gums. And those pickled vegetables sitting in brine for months are so acidic they sting your tongue. The burning is sharp, almost electric, but you keep eating because hunger is worse. There's no such thing as brushing before bed. Nights in the cottage mean curling up in the dark with the taste of the evening meal still clinging to your teeth. Sometimes a bit of gruel or bread works its way into the gaps between your molars, wedging there like a splinter in wood. You tongue it absent-mindedly as you fall asleep, unaware that the longer it stays, the more it feeds the tiny invisible invaders in your mouth. When the pain comes, it doesn't announce itself with a warning. One morning you wake to find a dull throb along your jaw. By midday, the throbbing has turned into a sharp, stabbing sensation every time you chew. You press a hand to your face and your mother notices. Her eyes soften, but she doesn't rush to fix it. There is no fix. She might boil some chamomile flowers or crush cloves to pack against your tooth, hoping the bitterness will numb it. The relief is real, but fleeting. Within hours, the pain is back, deeper, angrier. In the village, you've heard whispers about worms in teeth. The elders believe that toothaches are caused by small creatures burrowing inside, gnawing at the bone. If the pain is unbearable, someone might offer to smoke the worms out. You've seen it done leaning over a pot of steaming herbs while holding the sore side of your mouth open. The heat rushes in, the bitter smoke curls around your gums, and everyone watches, waiting for the worm to flee. Of course, nothing emerges. The pain remains. But people nod and say it will help because there's nothing else to say. By your teenage years, the damage is visible. Your front teeth are worn flat, the enamel dulled from years of grinding against coarse bread. Small dark pits mark the tops of your molars where decay has set in. Some of your friends already have gaps in their smiles, the empty spaces where teeth used to be. You joke about it together, how you'll end up like old Tom with no teeth at all, gumming his way through life. But underneath the laughter is a quiet dread. Work makes it worse. You spend long days in the fields breathing dust that settles on your tongue and clings to your gums. You drink ale to wash it down, but the ale is thick and leaves a film across your teeth. On hot days, you chew stalks of wheat or barley, not knowing that the fibrous strands will wedge between your teeth and stay there for days. You've got no toothpick, no thread, no way to clean it out. Every so often you hear about someone going to the nearest market town to see a barber surgeon. He'll pull teeth among other things. His shop smells of blood and vinegar, and the tools on his table are stained from past work. You can pay him to take a tooth, but the journey is long, and the price steep, too steep for most peasants. So instead, the pain lingers until it forces your hand. And when the day comes, you'll sit in a wooden chair, grip the arms, and try not to scream as the iron lever pops your tooth free with a sound you'll never forget. At night, you lie in the straw bed, listening to the creaks of the rafters, the scurrying of mice, and the quiet groans of others in the household. You're not the only one with an aching jaw. In the darkness, toothaches are as common as dreams, and sometimes just as haunting. By the time you're 20, you've stopped expecting your teeth to last. They're more like worn tools now, still useful, but chipped, dulled, and increasingly unreliable. You've learned to chew carefully, testing each bite before committing. Your tongue has become your scout, running along the edges of your molars to check for new jagged spots where enamel has cracked away. Some days, the damage feels minor, a nuisance you can live with. Other days, it's like a hot nail being driven into your jaw with every bite. You've also learned something else. Pain changes how you eat. You start favoring softer foods, even if they're bland or less filling. Gruel becomes a kind of salvation, though it's often cold by the time you get to it. On the days you work in the fields from dawn to dusk, the thin, watery porridge waiting for you might be the only thing you can manage without wincing. You sip it slowly, the taste of boiled grain flat on your tongue, but at least it doesn't send shocks through your jaw. Sometimes, though, you can't avoid the hard stuff. In winter, preserved foods are all you have. Dry beans, tough salt, fish, bread so stiff it could double as a weapon. You soften it in ale or stew when you can, but there's never enough liquid to soak every bite. And so you chew through the pain, jaw tight, eyes watering, telling yourself this is just what eating feels like. The smell in your mouth changes too. You don't have a word for it, but you notice it when you speak close to someone and they pull back just slightly. Decay has a scent and it clings to you. It's not just your breath, it's in the gums, in the small pockets of rot where food hides and festers. You try rinsing with water when you remember, or with the strong ale your father swears will kill anything in your mouth, but nothing lasts. Within hours, the sour taste creeps back, and then there's the swelling. One morning you wake to find the side of your face puffy and tender. At first you think you must have slept wrong, pressing your cheek into the straw. But by midday, the swelling grows, the skin warm and tight, the pain throbbing like a drumbeat in your skull. You know what it means. You've seen it before. An abscess. You've watched neighbors die from them when the infection spread, though no one calls it that. They just say the rot got into the blood. Your mother sends you to the healer who offers a poultice of garlic and onion to draw out the bad humors. You hold it against your cheek until your skin itches from the juices. Sometimes it helps a little, sometimes not at all. If the swelling bursts on its own, the taste is foul, metallic, and putrid. But for a moment, the pressure lessens. You spit into the dirt and try not to think about what was inside you. If it doesn't burst, you face a choice. Either live with the pain until you can't eat, or let someone take the tooth. You've seen extractions go wrong, teeth breaking at the root, splintering the jawbone, leaving the person worse off than before. But you've also seen the relief on someone's face when the cursed thing is finally gone. They spit blood, wipe their mouth, and smile for the first time in weeks. That's the hope you cling to. The years wear you down. You might lose a tooth here, another there, until chewing becomes more about mashing food against your gums than biting. You're young, but your smile is already the smile of someone twice your age. You notice the way it changes your speech, too. Certain words sound softer, less sharp. The village children tease you sometimes, but you know they'll have the same fate soon enough. By the time the first gray hairs appear at your temples, your teeth tell your life story better than any chronicle. They're a map of every hard crust, every winter of scarcity, every night you fell asleep with grit still in your mouth. They remind you that in this world, survival isn't about living without pain. It's about learning to live alongside it. You start noticing something about the elders in the village. Not just that they have fewer teeth, but that they move their mouths differently when they eat. They chew in slow, deliberate circles, keeping the food in a specific spot where their remaining teeth meet like an old millstone grinding grain in a narrow groove. You realize this is learned behavior, a survival skill born from decades of adapting to pain. And without meaning to, you begin doing the same. Your meals become exercises in caution. You tear bread into tiny pieces, soften them in broth, and push them into the side of your mouth that still feels strong. Meat is sliced thinner and chewed longer. Even roots and greens are carefully shredded with a knife before they ever reach your lips. It's not about manners, it's about strategy. Every bite could be the one that cracks a weakened tooth or drives food deep into an exposed cavity. The winters make things worse. The cold air seems to sink straight into your jaw, making every nerve scream when you bite down. You pull your hood tight when you walk to the fields, but the cold finds you anyway. Sometimes you press a warm stone against your face by the hearth before eating just to numb the ache a little. It works briefly. Then the first bite of food undoes it. Your gums start to recede slowly, exposing more of the tooth roots. You don't have the words for gum disease, but you can feel it: loose teeth that wiggle when you push them with your tongue, gums that bleed after a particularly rough meal. Sometimes the bleeding is so heavy, you spit pink foam into the dirt beside you. Nobody gasps. Nobody tells you to see a doctor. It's just one more ordinary indignity of peasant life. And yet you keep going. Hunger doesn't wait for a toothache to pass. You work in the fields pulling turnips from the frozen ground, knowing you'll be eating them within hours. They'll be boiled until soft, but even then, the fibrous strands will cling between your teeth. You'll feel them there, stubborn as weeds, for days. In the market town, you sometimes pass the stall of a man who sells odd little sticks bundled with twine. He calls them chewing sticks and says they'll clean your teeth if you rub them along the gums. You try one once. The fibers fray at the tip, and you scrub as best you can, but the taste is bitter and woody, and your gums bleed where the stick catches on rough enamel. You don't bother buying another. The truth is, no one in your world thinks of a mouth as something to care for, only something to endure. A toothache isn't a sign to change habits. It's a reminder that your body, like the tools you use every day, will wear out in time. You replace a worn hoe mend, a torn tunic, and pull a rotten tooth. The logic is the same. Some nights you dream of eating without pain. In the dream, the bread is soft, the meat tender, the fruit sweet and crisp, without sending pain shooting through your jaw. You wake with the taste of it still in your mouth, a phantom sweetness that makes your real breakfast of ale and bread feel even more bitter. And yet, there are moments, rare, fleeting, when you forget the state of your teeth. A wedding feast with roasted goose so rich you barely notice the crunch of grit. A late summer harvest when the pears are ripe enough to melt on your tongue. A stolen spoonful of honey when the beekeeper turns his back. These moments remind you why you keep chewing, keep enduring, even as the damage mounts. Because here in your world, there is no fixing what's broken. There is only living with it until it's gone. By your 30s, the story of your teeth is written in gaps and jagged edges. Some are missing entirely, others lean at awkward angles where the gums have loosened their grip. When you run your tongue along them, the surfaces feel uneven, some worn smooth as river stones, others sharp like splinters. You don't think about smiling anymore, not in the way a noble might for a portrait. Your mouth is for eating, speaking, and surviving, and every one of those tasks has become harder. You've learned to read other people's mouths too. In the flicker of firelight, you notice the dark spots, the swollen cheeks, the way someone favors one side when chewing. You can tell by a person's voice whether they've lost front teeth. It changes the way the words pass their lips. You can even hear the dull, wet quality of a voice when an abscess swells in the jaw. At gatherings, the noise of eating is a chorus of careful chewing, occasional groans, and the sharp intake of breath when pain flares. Nobody stops to comfort you if it's your turn to wince. They're all fighting their own battles. In this, you share a silent understanding. Pain is part of the meal. Work in the fields doesn't wait for a toothache to pass. If anything, it makes things worse. Biting through a strip of dried meat, or gnawing on a crust of bread, is one thing, but when you're threshing grain or winnowing chaff, dust coats your tongue and gums grinding against what enamel you have left. You spit brown into the dirt, rinse with ale, and get back to work, knowing each day in the fields is another day closer to losing what remains of your teeth. You've tried the folk cures, rubbing your gums with ash from the hearth, said to pull out the bad blood, holding a heated iron near the sore tooth to drive away the ache, chewing parsley, mint, or sage to sweeten the breath. They might mask the smell for a while, but they do nothing for the deep throbbing pain that blooms in the bone itself. And then there are the desperate remedies. Once, when an abscess swelled so badly you couldn't sleep, a neighbor suggested holding a frog in your mouth. She swore the creature would draw out the poison before hopping away. You tried it, the cold skin and twitching legs pressing against your tongue. The frog escaped before the hour was up and your face still burned. You never tried that again. Sometimes you think about what it would be like to have a mouthful of strong teeth like the ones you remember from childhood before the grinding and rot began. You imagine biting into an apple without flinching, or laughing without wondering who's noticing the black hollow where a tooth once stood. But those are daydreams as far from reality as castles in the sky. You also notice how missing teeth change what you eat, and even how much you eat. Harder foods get left behind at the table. You fill up on pottage ale or bread softened in broth. Over time, you lose weight, your face taking on that hollow look common among older peasants, even if you're not yet old. Sometimes the absence of pain feels almost like luxury. You have days, maybe weeks, when nothing in your mouth screams at you. But then, as sudden as a summer storm, the ache returns, sharp, stabbing, unrelenting. It might be a cracked tooth or another infection building under the gum. You learn not to ask why. You just endure because there's nothing else to do. And yet, in your small world, you carry on. You laugh with your neighbors, sing during the harvest, and drink at the tavern, all with the knowledge that tomorrow a tooth might give way. Your mouth may be a battlefield, but it's one you've learned to fight on without surrender. By now, you've made peace with the fact that your teeth will never improve. The best you can hope for is to keep the pain at bay for as long as possible. You know the signs when a dull ache turns sharp, when swelling creeps along your jaw, when the gums redden like raw meat. These are warnings, and you heed them in the only way you can, by avoiding certain foods, eating more slowly, or simply chewing less. Your meals have become a study in adaptation. You find yourself cradling a bite of food in your mouth, letting your saliva soften it before you try to chew. You take small sips of ale between bites, not for thirst, but to help wash the grainy pulp down without grinding it further against your teeth. Sometimes you feel like you're working twice as hard just to eat half as much. You've heard of tooth powders in the market town, ground herbs and chalk that the wealthier folk claim will polish and strengthen teeth. But such things are far beyond your means. Even if you had the coin, you'd likely spend it on grain or oil for the lamp. In your world, a mouth is just another part of the body that wears down with age, and no one wastes precious silver trying to preserve it. The real danger is when infection sets in deep. You've seen it kill before. The swelling starts in the gum, spreads to the cheek, then down the neck. The person grows feverish eyes, glassy, voice weak. They can't eat, then they can't drink, and before long they can't get out of bed. Some recover after days of misery, but others don't wake at all. The village whispers about curses or divine punishment, but you've learned it's just one more way this life can take you. When the pain gets too much, you consider the blacksmith again. He's pulled your teeth before, each time leaving you half in shock from the force it takes to free them. The tongs grip the tooth, the hand twists, and there's that awful pop, followed by hot metallic blood flooding your mouth. The pain doesn't end immediately. In fact, it changes, shifting from the stabbing of a rotten tooth to the throbbing of an open wound. But in a day or two, the relief comes, and for a little while you feel almost whole again. The gap it leaves is another reminder of the slow march toward toothlessness. You change how you chew to compensate. You shift food around your mouth like a chess piece, always planning the next move so it lands in the safest spot. You've become a strategist without even thinking about it. And you're not alone. Look around the hearth at night, and you'll see the same patterns: your mother carefully chewing on the right side. Only your father slicing meat into tiny strips, your sister avoiding crust altogether. Everyone is managing their own private war with their teeth. It's not a matter of if you'll lose them, but when. Every once in a while, though, something will make you forget. A good laugh with friends at the tavern, a night of music after the harvest, or the sweet drip of honey stolen from a comb before the bees notice. In those moments, you don't care about the gaps or the aches. You're just living. And maybe that's the real secret you endure, because life still has sweetness, even if it sometimes stings when it touches your teeth. You notice something strange about your reflection the few times you catch it. In still water or a polished bit of metal, your mouth looks older than the rest of you. The lines around your lips are deeper, your cheeks more hollow. The gaps where teeth are missing make your jaw seem sunken, even though your hands are still strong, your back still straight. It's a kind of aging that begins in the mouth and works its way outward, changing the shape of your face long before time has truly claimed you. In the village, people know each other's teeth as well as they know each other's eyes. You can tell who's recently had an extraction by the way they hold their jaw or sip their ale. The blacksmith keeps a jar with the teeth he's pulled more for his own amusement than anything else. You've seen him tip it over in the tavern, letting the yellowed, cracked little trophies clatter across the table while everyone laughs and cringes at the same time. You laugh too, but you also imagine your own teeth among them, each one a marker of another battle lost. The seasons dictate the state of your mouth as much as anything. In summer, the fresh fruits and greens are a small blessing, gentler on the teeth, though the sweetness of overripe fruit can still spark a sudden stab of pain. In autumn, you feast on softer stews and tender meats when the slaughtering is done, and for a few short weeks, eating almost feels like pleasure again. But winter and early spring are the long, hard months. Everything is dry, salted, or tough. Your jaw aches constantly, and you chew more out of necessity than desire. And then there are the celebrations, times when you're expected to eat more than usual. Weddings, harvest feasts, midwinter festivals. You push through the pain to avoid drawing attention, swallowing bigger chunks than you should, knowing they'll sit heavy in your stomach because you didn't chew them well. The ale flows freely, dulling the ache for a few hours. But the next morning, your mouth feels raw, as if every nerve has been scraped. The unspoken truth in your world is that no one dies with all their teeth. By the time someone is old, their smile, if they have one left, is a patchwork of gaps. Food is mashed with the tongue and gums, and eating takes twice as long. You've seen the elders at the edge of the hearth, slowly working through a bowl of pottage long after everyone else has finished. The firelight shows every hollow in their faces, the places where bone and muscle have retreated for lack of use. You think about the future sometimes not with hope but with resignation. You imagine yourself sitting there one day, hunched over your own bowl, working through your share, while younger voices and stronger jaws laugh around you. It's not a frightening thought exactly. It's just the way things are. You were born into this world, knowing it would take your teeth piece by piece long before it took the rest of you. And yet for all the pain and loss, there's a stubbornness in you that refuses to stop. You chew what you must, you endure the aches, and you keep showing up to the table. Because in the end, every meal, no matter how hard-earned or painful, is proof that you've made it through another day. And in your world, survival itself is a kind of victory. There comes a day in late winter when you realize that chewing has become more of a memory than a habit. Your mouth still goes through the motions, but the real work is happening with your tongue and gums mashing food down enough to swallow. You hardly notice at first until you try to eat something as simple as a slice of apple and find yourself shifting it from seat to side looking for the one spot in your mouth that can still bite without flaring pain. It's not just the missing teeth. It's the ones that remain. They've grown brittle, their edges sharp and irregular. When you chew, they sometimes catch on the inside of your cheek, tearing the soft flesh. The taste of blood mixes with whatever you're eating, and you don't even flinch anymore. You've grown used to the metallic tang, just as you've grown used to the dull ache that follows you from dawn until you fall asleep. The younger ones in the village still have their full sets, though you can see the beginnings of trouble in their mouths, the fine cracks in their enamel, the little shadows at the gum line. You don't bother warning them. There's no avoiding it. Instead, you watch quietly as they take big, careless bites of bread or gnaw on roasted bones, knowing they'll learn soon enough what those choices will cost them. Your diet has shifted over the years without you even deciding it. Where once you might have fought your way through a hard crust or a strip of dried meat, now you instinctively choose the softer parts, the center of a loaf, the fatty bits of meat, the well-cooked vegetables from the bottom of the pot. You eat slower too, not from politeness, but because rushing risks a jolt of pain that can ruin an entire meal. Festivals have changed for you as well. Where others load their plates with roasted goose pies and hard cheese, you stick to pottage-sweetened ale and anything that can be broken apart with your fingers. You smile when people urge you to try just a bite, but you shake your head. It's not worth it. You've learned that a single reckless chew can leave you awake half the night, pressing a rag against your jaw to keep the throbbing down. The healer still offers remedies, garlic poultices, clove oil rinses made from boiled sage, but you know they're only small mercies. The ache always returns. When an infection flares, you hope it will burst on its own, because the thought of another extraction fills you with dread. You've already lost so many. And yet there are moments that catch you off guard. A soft pear in late summer sweet, and yielding almost melting on your tongue. A warm bowl of milk and honey on a cold morning, sliding down without resistance. These rare pleasures remind you that eating can still be more than survival. They are small, stolen victories, proof that your mouth hasn't been completely claimed by time and hardship. But they never last long. Soon enough, you're back to the same careful patterns, the same slow grinding, the same unending negotiation with the few teeth you have left. You've learned to live in a kind of truce with your mouth, knowing that one day even that will be over. By the time you reach middle age, you've grown into a kind of quiet expertise about your own mouth. You can tell the difference between the ache that means a tooth is cracking and the deeper, hotter pain that means infection is brewing. You know which foods will crumble softly between your gums and which will fight you for every bite. You've even mastered the art of moving food around mid-chew, guiding it away from a tender spot before it can do damage. But no matter how careful you are, the losses keep coming. One day, a tooth that has held on for years will simply give way. Sometimes it's sudden, a sharp snap as you bite into bread or crunch a stray bit of grit from the mill. Other times it's slower, the tooth loosening bit by bit until it finally falls out into your palm. You don't even bother going to the blacksmith anymore. There's no point. The teeth will go when they're ready, and all you can do is endure the pain until they do. When a tooth falls out, you run your tongue over the new gap again and again, tracing the edges of the gum where it once sat. It feels strange for days, almost as though the tooth's ghost is still there and you keep trying to chew on it out of habit. But habits fade quickly in this life, replaced by new patterns of survival. Food loses some of its joy as the years pass. Hard cheese is a challenge. Now nuts are nearly impossible, and even the crust of a loaf, once a daily staple, has to be soaked before you can manage it. You eat more broths, more porridges, more mashed roots, not because you prefer them, but because they don't leave you clutching your jaw in the middle of the night. The younger folk sometimes tease you, not cruelly, but with the careless laughter of those who still have their own teeth. They call you soft chewer or offer you the mushiest part of the meal as a joke. You laugh along because what else is there to do? Deep down you know they'll join you soon enough. You've seen it happen too many times to doubt it. At night, lying on your straw bed, you think about how much of your life has been shaped by what you can and cannot eat. There were the years you avoided the market's harder fare, the festivals where you kept to the pottage, the work days when you couldn't eat enough to keep your strength, because every bite was a battle. You've learned that hunger and pain often go hand in hand, and you've become skilled at living with both. Still, you find small ways to keep some dignity. You rinse your mouth with ale after eating, not because it truly cleans your teeth, but because it makes your breath less sour for a little while. You chew sprigs of mint or parsley in summer when they're growing by the cottage, letting the sharp green taste cut through the bitterness that lingers in your mouth. These aren't cures, but they are small acts of care in a world that offers so few. The truth you've carried all your life is simple in your world. Teeth are not something you keep, they are something you lose slowly, painfully, inevitably. And each loss changes you a little, not just in how you eat, but in how you see yourself. Your mouth tells the story of every winter survived, every hard crust bitten, every year endured. And in its way, it's proof of your stubbornness. There's a strange thing that happens once you've lost enough teeth. You begin to forget what it was like to have them all. The memory of biting into something with confidence fades. Instead, you measure food in terms of softness and shape, weighing each mouthful for its potential to hurt you. Apples, once a treat, are now an enemy unless they've been stewed to pulp. Bread is safe only from the very center of the loaf. Meat must be boiled until it falls apart under its own weight. Your gums toughen over time, a kind of crude compensation for what's gone. They harden where they've been pressed into service as stand-ins for teeth-mashing food against the few survivors left in your mouth. But toughness doesn't mean comfort. Chewing still sends shocks of pain now and then, sharp and sudden, like stepping barefoot on a stone hidden in the grass. By now, your mouth is more gaps than teeth, and your speech has changed. Certain words whistle slightly, others sound blurred. Children sometimes mimic the way you talk, laughing in that careless way children do. You take no offense. You laughed at your elders once too. Now you see your reflection in them. The seasons continue their quiet assault. Winter is still the hardest, when every meal is hard salty or dried, and chewing feels like grinding rock against bone. Spring is a little kinder, but fresh greens are fibrous and can be just as tricky as dry food. Summer and autumn bring the gentlest days for your mouth, soft berries, tender vegetables, and roasted meats fresh from the fire. But those seasons pass quickly, and you know the cycle by heart. Your awareness of infection has sharpened. You know when a swelling might kill you, even if no one uses those words. You've seen neighbors go from lively to bedridden in a matter of days, their jaws locked tight, fever burning through them. Sometimes the swelling bursts and they survive. Other times it spreads inward, and they're gone before the weekends. You count yourself lucky each time you make it through an ache without that ending. In the tavern, when mugs of ale are raised, you sometimes see a flash of what life might have been like if teeth lasted. The young ones tear into roasted fowl, laugh with their mouths full, chew on hazelnuts without thinking. They aren't careful yet. They haven't learned. You don't begrudge them that innocence. It's a short-lived gift. You've also learned that losing teeth changes your appetite in ways you didn't expect. It's not just the pain, it's the effort. Eating takes so long now that you often tire of the meal before you've eaten enough. You feel hunger in the evenings, but you'd rather ignore it than spend another hour coaxing food into something you can swallow. It's not that you've lost the will to eat. It's that eating itself has become a kind of labor, one more task in a day, already full of them. Sometimes lying in the dim glow of the fire, you think about how your teeth have been with you through every change in your life. They've bitten through the bread of lean years, torn the meat of festival days, and ached through nights of hunger and cold. Now as they dwindle, you feel the years in your mouth more than in your back or knees. In a way, your teeth have been the truest record of your life. Each crack, each gap, each missing piece a chapter written in bone. There comes a point when eating becomes less about taste and more about calculation. Every meal is a problem to solve. How to get the food down without hurting yourself. How to work around the newest tender spot. How to make the most of the teeth you still have. You've become so practiced at this that you can hold an entire conversation while mentally charting a path for your next bite, shifting it around your mouth like a chess piece avoiding danger. Your jaw feels different now too. Without teeth to keep it aligned, it sometimes clicks or shifts when you chew. On cold mornings, it stiffens and you find yourself massaging the joint just to loosen it enough to eat. Your gums, hardened by years of use, still ache under pressure, especially where the bone beneath has begun to wear thin. There's no word in your village for bone loss, but you know it's happening. You can feel the way your mouth has changed shape over the years. When you talk to the elders, you notice how they lean forward when speaking, as if to make up for the way their voices have softened with age and missing teeth. You've begun doing the same without realizing it. Your laugh is different, too shorter, more closed-mouthed, not because you're ashamed exactly, but because you've learned that an open laugh can invite jokes about the gaps you carry. The meals you look forward to most now are the ones that ask the least of your mouth. A warm bowl of pottage with plenty of liquid, a soft-boiled egg milk sweetened with honey when you can get it. Sometimes you'll skip the harder fare altogether, letting others take the crusts and tougher cuts without complaint. They assume you're being generous. In truth, you're simply avoiding another sleepless night of throbbing pain. You still hear about cures from time to time, stranger remedies brought back from travelers or the market. Powdered deer antler to strengthen the roots, rinsing with brine to harden the gums, chewing willow bark to ease the ache. You've tried some ignored others, but the result is always the same temporary relief at best, nothing at worst. In this world, the only true cure for a tooth is losing it. Sometimes when the pain is low and the fire is warm, you find yourself remembering what it felt like to eat without thinking. You can almost taste the crisp skin of roasted fowl, the snap of an apple, the way bread used to give beneath your teeth instead of resisting like stone. But those memories are slippery things. They fade the moment you return to the present, to the slow grind of your gums, to the careful sipping of ale between bites. The truth is, you've made peace with it, at least in part. You've learned that life in the village takes its toll in different ways for everyone. For some, it's the back bent from years in the fields. For others, it's the hands knotted from endless labor. For you, it's the mouth-worn, battered, missing pieces, but still working, still serving you well enough to keep you alive. And in this place, that's all that really matters. By now, you measure time not in seasons or harvests, but in the teeth you've lost. Each gap is a kind of milestone marking the slow, inevitable progress toward a mouth that will one day be empty. You no longer feel the same pang of sadness you once did when a tooth loosens and goes only a resigned acceptance like watching a candle burn down. You've adapted so thoroughly that others sometimes forget how many teeth you're missing. You can still eat, still talk, still laugh, even if you do all of it differently now. When you sit at the table, you arrange your food without thinking soft items closest to hand, harder ones pushed aside unless you're feeling brave. Sometimes in the middle of a meal, you'll pause and work a piece of bread or meat into a smaller portion with your fingers before putting it in your mouth. Nobody comments. They do the same when it's their turn to struggle. The blacksmith still offers extractions, but you rarely need him anymore. Most teeth now leave quietly worn down by years of grinding against coarse bread and millstone grit. When one falls out, you feel a strange lightness in your mouth, as if space itself has been freed. You run your tongue over the smooth gum, wondering how long before the next one follows. Your sense of taste has changed too. Without teeth to tear and grind, you find yourself savoring food in a different way, rolling it on your tongue, letting the flavors spread before you swallow. Sometimes this is pleasant. Other times it's frustrating as you can't chew enough to release the full taste from tougher foods. You've grown fonder of soups, broths, and stews, not just for their softness, but for the way they carry flavor without demanding too much work from your mouth. The healer visits less often these days, but when she does, she looks into your mouth with the same shake of the head she gives everyone past a certain age. There's no shame in it. It's just the way life works here. Teeth are not meant to last as long as you do. Winter remains the worst. The cold gnaws at your jaw, stiffening the muscles, making the gums feel raw. On those days, even soft food can sting. You've taken to holding your hands near the hearth and pressing the warmth into your cheeks before you eat, trying to coax some comfort into the bone beneath. It helps a little, but not enough to stop the ache entirely. In the quiet moments, you sometimes wonder what it would be like to have a mouth full of strong, healthy teeth again, not for vanity, but for the ease it would bring. You imagine biting into an apple without fear, or tearing a piece of bread without having to soften it first. These are luxuries you'll never know again, but they still live in your mind, as real as the taste of honey or the feel of summer sun on your face. And so you carry on chewing slowly, swallowing carefully, and reminding yourself that survival is not about perfection. It's about making do with what you have left and making it last as long as you can. There's a certain point when the battle for your teeth is no longer about keeping them. It's about keeping yourself going without them. You've reached that point now. Your mouth is mostly gums, with only a few stubborn survivors holding their ground, like weathered stones in an empty field. Those last teeth are precious, not because they're strong, they aren't, but because they give you just enough bite to manage the foods that would otherwise be impossible. You've become even more methodical about eating. Hard food is out of the question unless it can be boiled to submission. You're more patient now, willing to wait for the stew to soften everything before you start. Bread is torn apart and soaked until it's a pale, soggy shadow of itself. Cheese is crumbled, not bitten. Meat is taken only if it's fatty or falling apart, the rest passed to younger mouths that can handle it. And yet, despite the care, pain still comes. A swollen gum, a raw sore where a tooth used to be, or a sudden jab when your jaw shifts wrong. You've learned to live with a constant background hum of discomfort, only noticing it when it spikes into something sharper. On those days, you eat even slower, or not at all content to sip ale and keep your strength for work. The tavern is still a place you visit, though your role there has changed. You drink more than you eat, letting the warmth of the ale fill the spaces where food once would. The younger ones tear at roasted bones and laugh at the grease on their chins. You watch without bitterness. Their time will come as it came for everyone before them. Sometimes people ask if you miss having your teeth. The question makes you smile, not the open, full-toothed smile of youth, but a small, wry curve of the lips. You don't miss them the way you might miss a lost tool or a broken jug. Teeth were never permanent, not in your world. They were something you borrowed from youth and returned piece by piece to time. Still, you have your small pleasures. Fresh milk warmed by the fire, a bowl of mashed beans with a drizzle of oil, stewed apples in autumn sweet, and soft enough to eat without wincing. You take these moments slowly, letting them last, because they are rare, and because they remind you that eating can still be more than just fuel, it can be comfort. You also notice how your mouth has changed the way you interact with people. You choose your words more carefully, both for meaning and for ease of speech. You've developed small habits covering your mouth when you laugh, turning your head slightly when you speak, that are less about shame and more about control. It's easier to manage how others see you than to pretend your teeth aren't gone. And though your reflection in water shows a face lined by work weather and years, you know that every missing tooth is proof of survival. You've lived through lean winters, hard harvests, and long days in the fields. Your teeth may have failed you, but your will to endure has not. In the end, that's what keeps you at the table night after night, working through each meal with the same quiet determination you've carried all your life. By now, your relationship with food is less a matter of choice and more a matter of negotiation. You no longer think in terms of, what do I want to eat? But instead, what will my mouth let me eat today? Some mornings you can manage softer bread or a well-cooked vegetable without trouble. Other days, even the thought of chewing makes your jaw ache, and you resign yourself to thin broth and ale. You've learned the value of patience at the table. When a dish arrives, you let it sit longer, cooling and softening, while others dig in. By the time you take your first bite, the food has usually yielded enough for your gums to manage. It's not just about avoiding pain, it's about conserving energy. Eating is work now, and every bite takes effort. Your world has quietly adjusted around this reality. The younger ones instinctively hand you the softer parts of the loaf, the stewed vegetables from the bottom of the pot, the cuts of meat with more fat than gristle. They don't say anything about it, and you don't thank them aloud, but you feel the unspoken kindness. In return, you give them the harder foods you no longer touch, knowing their teeth can handle it while they still have them. The seasons still shape your meals. Summer is a brief reprieve with berries and tender greens that almost melt on the tongue. Autumn brings softer stews, rich and filling, when the harvest is good. But winter and early spring remain a gauntlet of dry bread, salted meat, and hard cheese foods you can only manage after soaking or mashing them into something unrecognizable. Pain is a quieter companion now dulled by years of living with it. When it flares, you endure it without fuss. You've grown so used to the steady throb in your gums that it feels almost unnatural when it's gone. On those rare pain-free days, you find yourself chewing a little faster, almost forgetting to be cautious until a sudden twinge reminds you that carelessness has a price. The blacksmith still pulls teeth for those who need it, but you rarely see him for your own. Most of yours have already surrendered to time and wear leaving smooth, empty gums behind. In a way, that's its own relief. Without the tooth, there's nothing left to rot. But each loss also narrows your menu a little more, trimming away foods you once could still manage. In the quiet of the evening, you sometimes think about how your mouth has shaped your life. You've turned down certain tasks during festivals because they involved foods you couldn't eat. You've ended conversations early at the tavern because you were too busy working a stubborn bite of meat into something swallowable. You've passed up offers of food from strangers because you didn't want them to see you struggling to chew. And yet, for all these limits, you're still here. You've outlasted bad winters, poor harvests, and the years when sickness took many in the village. Your teeth may be nearly gone, but your body still rises each morning, works through the day, and sits down to whatever the hearth offers at night. Survival, you've learned, is not about what you've kept, it's about what you can live without. And teeth, it turns out, are something you can lose and still keep going. By the time the last of your teeth are gone, your mouth feels strangely empty, as if a part of you that once defined daily life has simply vanished. You thought it would make eating harder, and it does, but in some ways it's also simpler now. There are no more sharp edges to catch your tongue, no cracked enamel to send bolts of pain through your jaw, just smooth gums toughened by years of work pressing food against themselves in a slow, careful grind. Your meals are softer than ever. Bread is always soaked vegetables boiled until they surrender, meat left to simmer, until it can be broken apart with a spoon. Nuts, apples, and hard cheese are things you no longer even consider. The very idea of biting into them feels like something from another lifetime. You've learned to be content with what you can have, not mourn what you can't. Eating is quieter now. You no longer make the sounds of chewing teeth, only the low, rhythmic mashing of gums and the occasional sip of ale to help things along. In company, you take small bites, letting conversations flow around you so you can work at your food without drawing notice. In private, you're slower still, savoring the moments when a meal goes down without resistance. The mirror of still water tells you your face has changed. Your jaw has narrowed, your cheeks have sunken, and your lips rest differently without the shape of teeth behind them. These changes don't trouble you much. Everyone in the village who's lived long enough wears the same look. It's not a mark of failure, it's a sign you've survived. Your sense of taste is sharper now, or perhaps just more focused. Without the distraction of strong bites, you notice the subtler flavors, the sweetness of a boiled carrot, the faint bitterness in a dark ale, the earthy richness of beans cooked over the fire. You've learned to draw more from less, to find satisfaction in things that once would have felt plain. And as you sit by the hearth on a cold evening, a bowl of warm pottage in your hands, you realize your teeth have been both a burden and a teacher. They've taught you patience, resilience, and the art of adaptation. They've marked the years not with their presence but with their loss. And in losing them, you've learned something deeper, that life is not made smaller by what's taken from you, only reshaped. In the end, your story is not about the pain of losing teeth, but about the quiet persistence that carries you through each day without them. You eat, you live, you endure, and in the dark, flickering glow of the fire that is enough. So now, with the tale told, you sit back and let the images drift like embers in a hearth. You've walked through a life where every meal was a negotiation, where the simple act of chewing carried the weight of years, and where survival meant adapting to what was left rather than yearning for what was lost. You've seen the way a mouth can tell a whole life story, not in polished white perfection, but in gaps, wear, and the soft lines of age. You've felt the seasons change not only in the fields, but in the ache of the jaw, in the foods that come and go with the turning of the year. You've learned how something as small as a tooth can shape the way you work, speak, eat, and even how you see yourself. And yet through it all, you've kept going. Your teeth may have been claimed by time, but they never took your will with them. In their absence, you've found ways to live fully in the world. You were given soft bread dipped in broth, warm ale on a winter's night, the tender sweetness of stewed fruit in autumn. Small pleasures, but no less precious for their size. Now, as the room around you grows quieter, you let the thought settle that perhaps there's a kind of freedom in letting go of what can't be kept. Teeth, like so many things, are only borrowed. When they're gone, life still goes on. The fire burns low, the night presses in, and you find yourself breathing more slowly, the ache in your jaw forgotten for now. You are here, you have eaten, you have endured, and tomorrow you will again.